Carl, first of all, a lot of people are wondering, are those really your comments that were published in Art Voice?
Yes.
And were they some sort of joke, or were you serious?
Well, as I said in the memo, a little bit of humor, old-style humor is good. And deprecating humor, yeah, it's the appropriate time. It's the appropriate time to say goodbye to a couple people who I think the country created a very divided country because they tried to bring the country someplace else other than where it wanted to be. And we witnessed, as a result, an upheaval in our middle class, in the silent majority, who said they had enough of this nonsense. They don't like the progressive movement. They don't like anything about Obama or what Obama has done. When you see the polls, just remember that a good 45% of those people are uninformed people. And it's pretty sad. You can't justify anything that he has done in education because he hasn't done anything in education, especially for our inner cities. It's so disgusting to watch these poor kids continue to suffer. He came in saying, oh, we're going to have vouchers and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. But what happened to Mr. Duncan? He was very, very disappointed. He quit. He had enough. He says, you promised me all these things. We're going to help these urban kids. He has done nothing for the black community. He's done nothing for those poor kids to give them an opportunity to live the American dream. And he wants us to give him a legacy. He wants us to be nice to him and not come out with some rotten humor and tell him, just what he did. Yeah, goodbye. Goodbye, Barack. Goodbye, Michelle. Oh, the woman who hated America and then stuck around for all the bennies. And then at the end, she says she's lost hope. America has no hope. It's the end. Well, Michelle, pack your bags and go over to Zimbabwe and live over there. Okay? And I just happen to pick a country. But that from my perspective, it's time that these things are said. And I say it with all sincerity, and I also say it with a little bit of humor. Okay? People don't like it, that's just too bad. I don't care. You don't want to read me? Fine.
A lot of people who have read that are reacting, though, saying these are racist and they're hateful.
That's what people say, barring or not having any other defense for the issue at hand. Okay, I hear it constantly. I'm a racist. I'm a racist for pleading for 33,000 kids we have in our municipal school system and trying to do something right for them. Trying to even hang the picture of the then current president of the United States in all our schools so the kids know who their president is? There's something wrong with that? How racist was that for the board members to turn that down the other day? Just how racist was that? So don't go accusing me of being a racist, because I'm about as far from that as possible, and that's why I feel I can say these things that I say. I don't care if they don't want to listen. The black leadership in this community is horrible. They do nothing for their people. They do it for their own power and self-preservation, and so they can get reelected. They like having the cycle of poverty in our inner cities across this country, because that cycle of poverty is the voting base of the Democratic Party. Keep them hungry, keep them dumb, okay, and everything's all right with the world. And they do nothing about changing it. And we just witnessed a black president for 8 years doing absolutely nothing. Nothing. And in addition, disgracefully minimizing America to the international world, minimizing America in every possible respect. It was a disgusting presidency, and I'm glad he's gone.
Kids are going to read that, families are going to read that, though. Do you think it's appropriate for a school board member to make those type of public comments?
Hey, I'm not judging myself. I am what I am. I'm saying what I'm saying. And I don't see it as racist at all. And it's about time you guys got over being politically correct.
I mean,
Yep.
when you say that the message that you're trying to send, why phrase it this way that people could?
Because I got your
interpret that?
attention, didn't I?
I suppose. But
Did I get
doesn't
your
it bother-
attention to come in here, okay, and listen to the deeper story? Did I do that?
I suppose, but doesn't it water down the total message when the focus is on the way
No,
you phrase
because
it?
you guys print what you want to print, and it's only when I get you excited by saying something off the chart, okay, that you suddenly, okay, want to listen. That's the truth, isn't it? I can't get your attention otherwise. I've been called by 15 press outlets already today, okay? I figured that you two guys have been fair in the past, so I'll talk to you personally. But all the other ones, they're going to get that press release that I just printed. That's life in the big city. It's about time we started facing our challenges instead of dodging them. That's reality. That's real. Those issues are real. People suffer every day. Kids are suffering in our cities every day. And the politicians walk around like, oh, it's just another day at the ranch, you know. It's pretty sad, isn't it? Obama's looking for a legacy. He should have been thinking about his legacy 8 years ago when he started all this nonsense. He started telling us that there are certain people above the law. You can't prosecute them. He hid Lois Lerner. He hid the head of the IRS. He hid Eric Holder. He had Loretta Lynch compromise Comey in that election. Come on. Are people above the law? Now he's sitting there considering pardoning Hillary Clinton. What an affront to the American people that'll be. Talk about rioting in the streets. I think the people will be out there and they'll be really disgusted with this man. It'll be the final nail in the coffin of his legacy.
You know, the population of students in the Buffalo public school system is pretty diverse, and no matter what way you interpret it, some of the stuff you read or wrote reads in a racist tone. Like if you had to,
You're just stuck on racism, aren't you? How about talking about an issue? You're stuck on racism because you've got no answer for any of these other issues. It's ingrained in you. You're a young man, okay? You haven't been around here that long. You've been conditioned to think racism. Okay, there's a whole element of people out there that are racist. Well, 50% of the population of this country came out and said they had enough of this nonsense. Don't go throwing that word around loosely. I'm not a racist. Tell me how I'm a racist. What did I say?
I mean, the way it reads,
The way it reads is the way you want to interpret it. Okay, we can call it we can self-deprecate ourselves, or we can put words out there that'll deprecate somebody else, okay? And when we do it sometimes in jest, and we do it sometimes because we do want to hurt that person's feelings, okay?
When I talked with Common Council President Darius Pridgeon, he did not say it was racist. He agreed. He thought, First Amendment rights, you have the right to
because
say
he's
whatever.
because Darius Pridgeon is one of the more learned black leaders. I disliked Darius for many years, and I came to find the man to be really interested in doing better for our community. I mean, he's a guy that lived in the bad world, okay, and he's lived in the good world now, all right? And I think he earnestly tries. I look at some of these other black leaders, especially the members of the Board of Education, it's sickening. It's totally sickening. They just rigged a teacher's contract, okay? And then if I didn't say something yesterday, they were coming down hard on the nurses. I mean, where's the reality here? You rigged a contract. You did something illegal, okay? You deprived the board of having money to negotiate any other contracts. Why'd you do that for Phil Rumore? Why? Because he elected you? Because he gave you money for your election? You were bought and paid for? Pay to play? Is that the game? But you guys don't want to talk about that. You don't want to write about that, okay? All they want to write about is, did Carl Paladino say something racist? I said something that brought you into this room so that I could say the rest of it.
But the Common Council President, he said even though it wasn't racist, he thought it was hateful, and he was upset with that. He thought that was...
It's all right for me to not like our president. That's all right. I don't care. Call it hateful. That's all right. Doesn't matter. I don't like people that try to demean my country, that try to demean the veterans of this country, that try to demean the military of this country, that fired over 300 generals and admirals who wouldn't toe the line and wouldn't listen to this diminishing of our military. That's who I respect. I don't like a president, okay, who allowed Valerie Jarrett to go and stand down in Benghazi and not send our boys to help those kids on the ground. I have a military background, okay. My thought is the military never leaves its men behind, and Obama left them behind. He drew a red line in the sand in Syria, and then allowed all this killing to happen because he's a coward. We have a president who is a coward. A yellow-bellied coward representing America. And you want to know why the middle class rose up and said enough is enough? Just those simple things. I know you're going to edit the hell out of this thing, but it's, the reality is that there's a lot of real issues to discuss about this president and his legacy. He just pardoned 650 drug pushers. They're back on the streets poisoning our kids. Stop it. Stop saying that that's all right and acceptable. It's an afternote in the Buffalo News. 650 criminals who are prosecuted in our system, he just commuted their sentences. There's nothing wrong with that? That's not racist? What's it about? That's how I feel. Yeah.
Do you worry the backlash from this, though, could cause you some...
I don't care. I don't fear.
Administration?
Okay, I don't fear. No. I don't care. I don't care if they don't like me. I don't care if people got something to say, because I know that their minds have been so warped by this progressive movement over the years that these people have to be reconditioned to a reality that's not trying to micromanage every thought that they have. The press in the past has had that ability to tell them what the issues were and how to solve those issues. And they listened. And then finally they said, boy, there's something bothersome about this. So when they saw the guy come out with the flag, and the American flag, and say, we're going to make America great again, they listened. And they did that for a reason. That was more of an upheaval, of a revolution, than it was an election. The American people spoke, and that was awesome. And from my perspective, I'm just following up on the conversation.
You don't think this is going to put you in bad standings with
I
Donald
don't
Trump?
listen. I don't care if I'm in a bad standing with anybody, and I'm sure that Mr. Trump is going to say that's Carl being Carl, and he's doing what he believes in. That's what Donald Trump would say. I don't worry about that stuff. You wouldn't be able to live with yourself if you sat around and worried about that nonsense. Good?
Good.
Yep, we're good. Okay.
Good. All right. Everyone set?
Yep.
Barbara Seals, Evergold, you of course the president of the Buffalo School Board. Do you have any comments on what Carl Paladino has said in Art Voice, and then any comments also in his response to questions about what he said in Art Voice?
I haven't seen the response, but I do have a response to the original comments that were made. I have received just numerous telephone calls, emails, comments from members of the community who are distressed, who are angry, who are outraged that a sitting board member would make the comments that he made, the defamation of our sitting president, President Obama, and his wife are totally out of line and they're unacceptable. And I certainly have concerns as an elected official, as an elected board member, that a fellow member of the board representing this district would make such comments.
Have you spoken to other members of the board? What are they saying?
I haven't spoken directly to other members of the board at this point.
Now, in his comments, not only does he target elected officials at the federal and the local level, but also board members. How do you take that?
Well, Mr. Paladino has done this in the past, so that was not surprising whatsoever. What was surprising, though, were the direct attacks on the president and on the first lady in such demeaning ways, in such tone that many have described as racist and as sexist. And so those are the comments that I am most concerned about because of the messages that they send to our children.
What was the specific comment that Carl Paladino made in the Art Voice article, or what he'd like to see in 2017. What specifically was most troubling about what he said?
I think what was most troubling were the comments again about what his wishes were for President Obama and what his wishes were for the First Lady, Michelle Obama.
When he responded in writing today, he called it self-deprecating humor. It's something that America has lost.
Well, he may call it whatever he wants to call it, but that's not how people see it. And again, I have received so many calls and so many emails from community members, from parents, from educators, who have just felt that what was said was totally inappropriate. It was outrageous. They say it's vile, and I'm quoting. They say it's disgusting, and I'm quoting. So people are not seeing it as humor.
What do you want to happen?
What I want to happen is for Mr. Paladino to certainly recognize that what he has said is egregious, that what he has said, sends the wrong message to our students, and that he may want to retract what he said.
What do you think the reality of that is?
Do you agree with that call?
I agree that people have the right to call for the ouster of an elected official, particularly when they have made such comments that so many people are appalled at and so many people are outraged.
What do you think the reality is of him retracting his comments?
Well, you've already said that there was a statement that he made, and I think you called it something about humor, so it's probably not likely at all.
I didn't call it humor, he called it humor.
Yes, right, right.
Just to clarify.
He also says in his response that this is not about race. How do you respond to that?
I think it is most assuredly about race because, again, we have the first African-American sitting president, the first African-American first lady, and those comments that were made reflected bestiality, relating to bestiality, relating them to gorillas, and saying something about Michelle Obama being a man and being put out in the outback in Zimbabwe and mating with a gorilla, Max the gorilla. I think that a lot of us interpret that as racist.
What would you say to students of the district, many of whom, of course, are minorities and African American children?
I would say to students, first of all, the board sets a policy of expectations for student behavior. We expect them to be civil, we expect them to be courteous and respectful of each other and of authority. And we ask them to respond when they see something that is unjust going on. We expect them to respond when they see bullying going on. We teach them to be upstanders, not bystanders to something that's happening that's wrong in their district. And I would hope that they would see the response of community members, the response of board members who make to this as being an example of how we are going to demonstrate for them a way of being an upstander. Silence is not permissible. Silence is agreement. Silence to this would be agreement to what Mr. Paladino has said. So I hope that while Mr. Paladino's actions, I think, send the wrong message to students, that we can send the right message to students that there's a time and a place for you to stand up and to confront people who are saying things unjustly and who are bullying or abusing their power.
So you support people who want to see him removed from the school board?
I think that people have a right, just as Mr. Paladino has a right to say what he said, just as I have a right as a citizen to make comments in response to what he said. I think people have a right to call for his resignation or call for his removal.
Your initial reaction when you heard what he said, what was your initial reaction?
My initial reaction was to not be surprised, in a sense, because he said something very similar in emails that he sent out in the past. But I was outraged, or I am outraged too, because again, we represent a body, the Board of Education, who makes policy about how students should act. We have expectations that we set for students about their behavior. How can we then take those expectations and say, do as I say and not do as I do? So when we have board members who are demonstrating behavior that's absolutely unacceptable, if a student had written this kind of information, they put this kind of information on social media, they would be suspended. All right. We have what's called the Dignity for All Students Act. It does not just apply to students, it applies to everyone in the district. It applies to me, every other board member, every staff member. Adults are expected to adhere to that policy, and if we're not adhering to the policy, how in the world can we ask our students to adhere to it?
Do you or the board have the authority to remove him?
I'm sorry, I've got two questions on that.
Do you or the board have the authority to remove him if that's what it comes down to?
The board does not have the authority, and I thank you for asking that question, because I want to make that clear. The board does not have the authority to remove a sitting board member. We don't have the authority to sanction or to censure Mr. Paladino. That is not what we can do. And so I know that people are calling again, calling the office, calling me, calling other board members and staff and asking for his removal, but we don't have the authority or the power to do that.
Who does?
The commission, the New York State Ed Department.
And
Do you
anyone
plan-
can submit that request, right?
Yes, anyone can submit that request.
Do you plan on filing some sort of complaint with the State Education Department along these lines of reviewing his comments and potentially investigating whether he should and can be removed?
I think I'm going to keep my options open on that. I think certainly there are numerous possibilities that we're going to look at, but I'm not going to say at this particular point that I am going to file a complaint, but I think that we should keep our options open.
Do you intend to address this at the next board meeting?
I believe that it will be. I believe it will come up because I believe that the community will want to speak on it. Whether or not it's addressed, it really is something that the board as a whole should discuss. And as I said, I haven't spoken to individual board members at this point, but I think that the board has the option certainly to bring it up and discuss it at the next board meeting.
Have you spoken to the superintendent at all?
No, I have not spoken to Dr. Cash. She's not in town. Can I make just one more statement? It looks like we're winding down because I want to say something about this pen that I'm wearing today. I wore this pen purposely because it has great significance to me, and it really relates to, I think, what we're talking about today. And again, it's a message that I want to send to our students, because as they're watching this and as they're reading what's happening, I don't want them to think that one board member represents the entire board. But this pen represents a group of African American women called the Phyllis Wheatley Club that were formed in the late 1800s to address issues of diversity, and they didn't call it diversity then, but civil rights at the time, at the turn of the century. It's a small group of women that really made an impact in this community for African Americans. And in 1900, we had 357,000 residents in Buffalo, only 2,000 were African American. And yet these women made a significant contribution to the civil rights of African Americans because they spoke up, because they were proud, because they were courageous, and in facing much more danger to their own personal life and limb than we do today. So I wear this, and I hope students will take this as a symbol of people who went before them and talk about shoulders we stand on. I stand on these women's shoulders because they set an example for me and every other black woman who's come along to know that we can speak up, that we have a voice, that we can make change, and that we shouldn't stay silent in the face of power and speak power to truth.
Thank you, everyone.
Can you just hold for 1 quick second so that we get shots of the pen?
Get a shot of the pen. He's there with the microphone in front of him.
It's all about the pen.
At the end of this over, can you-
This is better than
Yeah.
the hard side, right?